Installment of Ask Fit and Bendy. I'm here with my teaching assistant, Betty Boop. And going to be answering all your questions. This is our first installment for 2015, and I'm really excited to be back. I have a little bit of that throat thing again that I had in November, so if I have to take a break and cough, please excuse me. It's almost gone, hoping it will go away. Lost my voice completely, that was fun. So we have a bunch of questions that have come in, both through the Facebook page and through the Instagram feed, and I'm going to get to all of them tonight, so got some good ones. We're going to start with Azari Frost. She has a question about her hamstring being cranky, and she has a really sore point in the back middle of the thigh, kind of halfway down, and it can sometimes go all the way down into the calf, and nothing's really changed in her stretch regimen that has made this happen, except that it's really cold. Yes, I was just in Chicago last week. Wow, that definitely had an effect on my body. Her sports massage therapist says it's tight and lazy glutes, and hamstrings are doing extra work to compensate with what the glutes aren't doing, but the massage didn't. So, sulky hamstring problems. Hamstrings do get crabby. They're one of those muscles. They're very sensitive. They're like the sort of sensitive artist of the muscle groups a lot of the time, especially the lower body, and that's why they're so often pulled and they get cranky. I think part of it is just we tend to, in general, neglect the back line of the body. We work a lot on strengthening the front. We tend to have strong quads, strong hip flexors, abs, pecs, biceps, and then the back line of the body, everything in the back of the body tends to be weaker and a little bit less behaved, and feels a little neglected. We can't see it with our eyes, and I actually think that has an effect on the way that we treat the back of our bodies. So there could be a number of things going on. Definitely the cold can make your body behave in strange ways, and when it's cold out, you have to spend even more time warming up. It doesn't mean just wearing warm clothes when you work out, although I certainly do that when it's cold. I wear my back warmer and like 50 layers. It means doing extra warm-ups and really not rushing getting into your flexibility. So it's possible that when it was cold, you started working out and went a little too hard, too fast, not taking into account how much longer your body might take to adjust to things when it's cold, and the muscle can just get angry at you and just grips up like that, and it's really hard to get it to ungrip. It's chewing on and gum. So some things that you can do to do that, some things not to do not pull on it. So that passive stretching, just trying to yank through it, it's just going to make the hamstring even more upset. It's like it's feeling sensitive now, it's feeling cranky, so you have to be really nice to it. So what I would recommend is really focusing on active flexibility. So exercises, these are in the Bendy body, where you lie on your back and you straighten your leg and bend it and straighten and bend it. You want to be lying all the way down for that. And one of the common problems that we have when we do that exercise is the desire to tuck the pelvis. So you see if my pelvis is tucked, yes, my leg comes up higher, but then it's easy to feel this in the back of the knee, but then you end up skipping that higher up part of the hamstring, which is where you're having problems. So you really want to make sure that your butt is dropped down on the floor. Oh, here's my other teaching assistant. Sorry, it's a cat. So you want to make sure the butt's down as you straighten the leg. Don't tuck the pelvis at all. Keep it down. Keep the pelvis in a neutral position as you straighten the leg. And that way you really feel a stretch all the way up into here. And don't pull on the leg for a while. Just straighten and bend until you can start to feel this relax a little bit. And then as you do the stretch, very, very gentle pulling and a little bend and straighten here with just a teeny bit of pressure. You can also interlace the fingers on the back of the thigh, pull the leg in and try to straighten it from here. This is really good for getting that upper part of the hamstring. So you glue the thigh to the chest and just try to straighten the leg as best as you can without the thigh coming away. So just get it as straight as you can. It may only come to here, that's no problem. But again, just go gentle on it for a while it's being sad and cranky. And it is possible that strengthening your glutes could help. So back leg lifts are good for that, but really work on keeping the pelvis tucked so you're not just strengthening the lower back, because that's not going to help you at all. You want to isolate the glute. Just focus on the strengthening and the active flexibility for a while, and warm up really, really well. Lots of cardio and running around before you start to do any kind of stretching when it's cold like that. So I hope it gets better. Keep me posted on how that goes. Anna Brooks. I work with bodies of all ages at a circus school. That's awesome. What advice would you give to older adult students aiming for complementary flexibility training? 40-year-olds with great handstands and cartwheels but would like to work towards splits and back overs. So it is definitely possible for adults to train flexibility. I myself am 40 recently, which I'm very excited about. And I can still do everything that I could do when I was younger. It just takes a little longer. So working with adults in flexibility as you get older, and I have students well into their 50s who are able to get their splits for the first time in their lives and able to improve their back bends. The thing is that you really need to go slower. You need to warm up really well. You need to be smart. You need to train smart. The older you get, it's more about training hard, or just train smart than training hard. When you're young, you can be like, hey, let's try this, kamikaze. You know, my favorite parlor trick was to kick up, catch my leg, and blam down into the splits. I don't do that so much anymore. Because when you're young, you'd be like, ow, that hurts, and tomorrow you don't feel it at all. As you get older, the ability of the body to just bounce back like that, it's not as good. But the great thing you have is when you get older is hopefully you've developed a little bit more mind-body connection, a little bit more body awareness, a little bit more patient, hopefully. It's always something to work on, right? So being really aware of your body. The other thing is to focus a lot on active flexibility, technique, stabilization. So that sort of stretching, like get into the pose by any means necessary, push into it, doesn't work so great for adults. You really gotta make sure that you're in the right position, look for those little imbalances where the knee's doing something wonky or the hip's kind of out of place, and fix those. Because as we get older, we have more muscle imbalances, we have injuries, we have bad habits that we've created throughout our lives, no matter how hard we try. And if you ignore those and just keep pushing through them, they'll get worse rather than better, because you will stretch the parts that are stretchy and the parts that aren't stretchy will hold on. So I actually have a whole 3-part blog post about stretching for adults on the Fit Bendy webpage. If you want to check out the blog there, that might be helpful to you if you have some more questions, but that's sort of a brief overview of stretching for those of us no longer in the first bloom of youth. All right, Danielle Christine. Are there any stretches you recommend to help open up the hips and release tension in the lower back that one can do at home with a tight schedule? Started my first desk job in the fall, sitting for each chunk of the day, yes, no fun. Okay, so that tightness through the hips, it's usually like right in here and through the outside of the hips, is a real problem for people who sit a lot. Sitting is terrible. We should never have invented chairs. The first thing I would suggest is if you can modify to do at least part of your work in a standing desk, that will be immediately helpful to reducing that problem. Just the minimal amount of sitting that you can do. So I know some people that I work with who are at desks have managed to create workstations for themselves where they can raise their computer up and stand and work for part of the day. If that's not possible for you, the other thing that's important is to have a seating arrangement so that your knees, like the way I'm sitting now, your knees should be slightly higher than your hips. A lot of desk chairs, and especially if you're vertically challenged like I am, I'm 5'3". So a lot of chairs for me are, they're a little too high so that my feet don't quite reach the ground and my knees end up being lower than my hips. What that does is it encourages you to slump into your lower back a little bit. And that really puts a lot of pressure on the hips and the lower back and tighten up that area a lot. So if you can have something underneath your feet so that your knees are a little higher than your hips and you can really get up on top of those sit bones when you're sitting, sit it nice and tall, that also will help to reduce the strain from sitting at a desk. In terms of stretches for that, there are a lot. There are a lot of different things I could give you, but something that you can actually do while you're at your desk, and I have a whole series coming out on flexibility for people who work at desks, so stay tuned for that. A good thing you can do is pick up one leg and cross it over the other leg, and actively, using the outside muscle right in the outside of the butt, push this knee down towards the floor, and then sit up really tall while you're doing it. And you can do that and breathe into it and count into it, count to about 5 to 10, and then keeping that lifting out of the hips, so not slumping, lean forward a little bit over that leg. And you'll feel the stretch in the outside of the hip here, and you're really working on feeling the lengthening through the lower back. And this is a really good antidote to that sitting problem. If you do that every half an hour, 45 minutes, do it on both sides. Pick this one up. This is my funny hip, so you'll notice the knee doesn't go down as far, but you really want to squeeze that outside muscle, push the knee down, push that ankle bone into the thigh. You can start to feel this inner thigh opening up and that lifting out of the lower back. There are lots of different places you feel this, in the inner thigh, in the outer thigh, in the lower back, and then you lean forward and you really get a nice stretch through the outside of the hip there. So just incorporate that into, you can push back from your desk and do that periodically, and it should help so that when you get to your, whatever your regular stretch routine is later in the day, it doesn't feel like you're starting from this really crunched up place. Kelsey Elise. Is it best to wait until you're done working on back bends to do forward folds? After a few minutes of working on my back, I feel like I need to stretch and forward fold before I continue. Is that a problem? Should I hold out and forward folds until I'm totally done with my back bends? So this is a controversial topic. Different contortionists will say really different things about this. Some people say you should do a forward fold in between every single back bend. Some people say you should not forward fold at all in between back bends, and you should wait till the end. My take on this is you should listen to your body. If your body's saying go forward in between your back bends, you should listen to it. Sometimes, especially if you tend to be really bendy in the lower back, something to work on is not collapsing to the back, extending the spine before you bend backwards. But any kind of back bend is really front stretching and back compression. So there is compression that happens, particularly in the lower back. You can minimize it by feeling a lift in the lower abs, supporting your body from your lower abs, shifting your center of gravity forward, something I talk about a lot in DVDs, so I don't want to get into it too much here. But it does happen. So that forward bending, what you're trying to do is really scoop the abs in and create some space in the lower back. I would not recommend going into deep forward bends, like really deep forward folds, like getting your body in between your legs, like crazy deep forward folds where you're feeling a lot of stretch. But a little bit of forward bend and stretching out the lower back can actually provide a little bit of space and relief. I just like moving in between my back bends. So coming up and doing some movement, side, move it around, to get, if those muscles are feeling crampy or cranky or that kind of like, there's a sort of seizing up and compressing of the muscles that can happen if you're doing a lot of back bending. Just kind of work that out, move it around. And the one forward bending stretch that I really like, you can do the standing or kneeling, is to grab the backs of your thighs and you press your hands into the backs of your thighs and then really tuck the pelvis and around the back, So it's easy to round at the top of the back. You're really working on rounding here. So pulling the abs in and trying to round the lower back. I don't have a lot of roundness there, so I have to do that a lot, work on that a lot. But that's a nice thing to do in between back bends, to just try to open up that lower back area. Listen to your body. Your body usually tells you what it needs. And the more that you listen to it, the happier it will be. Marie Jones. I've been using both DVDs regularly. That's wonderful. Rotating between the two every 2 to 3 weeks. Not only design my main goal is front splits. My question is, what are the guidelines to designing a program? So I've been working on a blog post about this because a lot of people are asking about how to design a program. I think you're not the only one this week. Again, this is one of those things where you really want to listen to your body. I don't have any hard and fast rules about how to design a program because your body's going to tell you. Some bodies take a really long time to recover after a workout. And you're so sore the next day and it just feels really miserable. And then maybe you need to space your workouts a little bit more until your body gets more used to it and your recovery time improves. Some bodies don't have that, need that same amount of recovery time, and you can train really regularly. But what I would say, what I do for myself is when I have a specific goal, like your goal is splits, I would say you want to train that minimum 3 days a week, maximum 5, 6. You always want to take at least 1 day off. And the exercises that help you do splits, so if you're working on your front splits, that's going to be lots of lunges, lots of hamstring stretches, lots of strengthening, of lifting out of hip socket. You can do calf stretches, all of those things that will help in your splits. Do 2 to 3 repetitions of each stretch. So you do the stretch for 30 seconds to 1 minute, come out, take a little rest, about 30 seconds to 1 minute of rest, do it again. Do it 2 or 3 times each one. So for instance, if you're doing the DVDs, do a section twice. And again, you don't want to push your body too hard. So if that feels like too much, you do it once at the beginning. But if you've been doing the DVDs for a while now, start to build up to repetition. Because the first time you do any stretch, even if it's a stretch you've done regularly, the first time you do it every day, your body's saying, ah. And the more often you do it, the less you get. There's always some the nerves are going, ee. And the body's it resists a little bit at first. It resists that initial opening. The second and third time, your body's now used to it. You've reset the nervous system and the muscles to be more accustomed to that lengthened position. So the second or third time you go into a stretch, it's much easier to get to that same point. Then you can go a little further. Without having to push it hard, it will just naturally start to go a little further. And progress is always made just in teeny millimeters. You only want to go one teeny little bit further every day. But if you do that repetition, you will find that your progress will come a lot quicker. And it's fine to focus on something, one thing. Like if you really want your shoulders to open up, you do lots of shoulder. You really want your hips to open up, you do lots of hips. Do that for a while. You get your hips to a happier place, and then maybe you try something else for a while. Not that you stop doing the hips, but in terms of that repetition, that focus, that can change maybe month to month. You want to do something consistently for about a month, but then you can alter it, you can change it, depending on how much time you have, so forth. So listen to your body, take notes, have a training notebook so that you can make notes about how your body will respond to different exercises. And you can always be changing and tailoring and focusing on different things and develop that relationship with your body. If you're feeling really sore and miserable and exhausted, maybe you're pushing it too hard. If you feel like you're not making any progress, maybe you try to switch things up, do more repetitions of something. Not necessarily pushing harder in the individual stretch, but doing more of that stretch. So hopefully that helps and that answers that question. Hi, Grace Webb. I have both the Get Bent and Bendy Body DVDs. Is it best to stick to one DVD or to alternate them each day, week, month to get the best results? My priority is to get my forward splits as I pull dance. Oh, those splits, you guys. Splits. Everybody wants their splits. My best recommendation would be to alternate them. So depending on where you are, whether you really feel like you need more of that control and the line and the stability that you get from the bendy body, or whether you've got more of that and you really need to just get the depth, which you get from Get Bent, I would do one twice a week and one once a week. So it might be bendy body, Get Bent, bendy body, or vice versa, and doing it that alternating thing, because they're going to give you slightly different things. Get Bent has more passive stretches, has some active stuff, has more passive stretches. Bendy body has more active stretches. So alternating them will give you a nice, well-rounded workout. So that's generally what I recommend. If you have both DVDs, they work off each other and they complement each other. And most of my classes use techniques from both. Tara Louise Cullen. Hi guys, don't mind me asking a question. I do not. I love questions. Using both DVDs, very much a beginner. Starting to see progress in my hips and getting closer to splits. Congratulations. However, I'm feeling strain in the inner part of my knees rather than my hips. I feel like I could sink lower in the hips if it were not for the discomfort in my knees. Why might this be? What can I do? Many things. So this is a common problem, knee pain. Just talking to one of my students about this today. So what happens a lot is let's say you have a lot of tightness in your hips naturally, which a lot of us do, and your knees are maybe a little wonky or unstable, which a lot of us have wonky, unstable knees. When you try to stretch, because a lot of muscles run over both the hip joint and the knee joint, sometimes if you're trying to stretch here and this is tight, it'll just pull on the knee instead because the knee is looser and squishy, and the body always likes to take the path of least resistance. So some things to look out for. Generally, if you're having pain in the inside of the knee, look at your back leg when you're in that lunge or that split, and you're probably going to see some rotation through the leg. You're going to see the leg going across the body in a weird way. Straighten that out. Lift the pelvis up higher. Don't be in such a hurry to sink your splits towards the floor that you push past where your hip is actually able to go. Your hip starts to rotate, then your knee starts to rotate. That's going to put pressure on that inner knee. So really focus on that straight alignment. If you have a yoga mat with striations, lines on it, or if you have a hardwood floor that you can just put a pad under the knee, but use the floorboards. Make sure that back leg is coming directly straight line out of the hip. It should be in a completely straight line. Don't let it go wonky like that, because that will put pressure on the knee. That holds true for your lunges and for your splits for that back leg. The front leg too needs to stay square, but particularly that back leg, very important. And I think I asked you about this, and you said that you were getting it in the front knee too. So look for that rotation in both the front and the back leg. Also, there is a muscle that stabilizes the kneecap. That it's part of the thigh complex of muscles, and it's towards the inside of the kneecap. And its sole job is to straighten the knee and stabilize the kneecap. And unfortunately, it's pretty weak on a lot of us because a lot of us don't really straighten our knees all the way that much in normal life. So to strengthen that, and we're going to talk about this again, we talk about getting nice extended lines in the legs. To straighten that, you're going to put your leg flat on the floor, and you feel that space underneath the back of the knee. You want to think about squeezing this muscle right here, right in the kneecap, to push the knee down into the floor so that there's no longer any space up under the knee. And when that happens, you'll notice the heel comes up off the floor. When you first try this, you might not get a whole lot of motion. There might be nothing going on underneath that knee, or no movement. That knee might not move at all. Just try to feel that muscle. If you feel all of these muscles all the way up into the hip working, and you're lifting the whole leg up off the floor from here, that's not what you want. You want to isolate this muscle in the knee. Doing lots of these will help to stabilize your knee and strengthen that muscle that will hold the kneecap in place and will stabilize the knee so that if the hip starts to pull on it, the knee will be like, I'm not doing that anymore. So work on doing that. I would say I generally recommend for people to do, if people are having me to do 50 of these. So you squeeze 1, 2, 3, relax, and 2, 2, 3, relax. Yeah. And then the next frontier, once that gets easy, you can get the back of the knee down. So you try to keep the back of the knee down and then get the heel back down too. That's pretty challenging. That's what's really going to get a deep stabilization. But this is the first step. It's just trying to feel those contractions, about 50 of those. So hopefully that helps. Just really working at the straight lines. Front leg coming straight out of the front hip, back leg coming straight out of the back hip. Look for rotations. If you see funny rotations, fix them. Have a friend look at your knees. That's what friends are for. All right, hope that helps. For Isaiah came across this page and I'm incredibly interested in contortion. I've been for a while. So wondering if you could help me find a stretching plan. If it helps, I'm your average teenage boy. Just your average teenage boy. I'm a martial artist. Awesome. I think I saw your picture. You look super buff. I'm fit, but not the most flexible. Please help. I really appreciate it. So, for muscular people who are like, and you put on a lot of muscle and you're really solid, but not that flexible, the best way to approach flexibility is to work on active flexibility, because the passive flexibility, so that means just sitting in a stretch and like trying to relax, is very difficult for people with strong, dense muscles. Those muscles aren't really so crazy about relaxing. They're really into contracting. And it makes stretching very frustrating and painful and not productive for some more muscular people who are just like, I tried to touch my toes and nothing's happening. So work on active flexibility. There are a gazillion exercises that I could tell you about. You could try my DVDs. There are a lot of DVDs out there. Mine are not the only ones. I can like mine, but I could point you in the direction of quite a few resources. Internet is full of them. But the main thing that I would recommend is work on your active flexibility. So work on using your muscles to stretch your other muscles. So for instance, if you're trying to touch your toes, don't relax the leg as you reach for the toes. Don't just let it sit there and just squeeze the knee and flex the foot and use the muscles in your back and your abs to reach forward. So don't think about relaxing into the stretching. The other thing I would say is that if you're doing a lot of strength training and martial arts stuff and you're doing a lot of conditioning that pumps your muscles up, the best time to stretch is right after your workout. Then the muscles are all pumped up and full of blood, and they're energized and they're warm, and they're going to be the most responsive to stretching after that happens. The warmer they are, the juicier they are, the more responsive they will be. The other great thing is doing stretching after your workout will reduce your muscle pain and soreness the next day from the workout, so bonus. And just start incorporating stretching into everything else that you do. If you're doing a bunch of push-ups in class, afterwards, stretch out your pecs. If you're doing pull-ups, afterwards, stretch out your lats and shoulders. Just always incorporate the stretches into what you're already doing. It doesn't have to be a huge separate thing at first. It just becomes part of your regular workout. Then as you start to gain flexibility, if you want to go deeper into contortion, like actual contortion training, then I always recommend, find an actual program. Find either a coach or online resources, find a program. I'm always hesitant to recommend that people 100% self-train, especially the YouTube self-training, because you really want to find something that works with your body. You want to find that very detailed, precise, technical instruction. Contortion is not something you want to just fool around with. A lot of people get injured from trying things and not really understanding the technique, and you can injure yourself. So if you want to be a contortionist, find someone to work with on some level, even if they're not directly with you. Adolescence is a great time to start doing that. Don't wait, start now. I hope that helps. All right, couple more questions. This comes from our Instagram for Chelsea Lang 1. Chelsea wants to improve the lines of the leg by opening up the back of the knee. She sent me some photos of her leg. You can see these photos now if you're on Instagram. You just look for #AskFitandBendy, and that's also a way that you can ask questions, #AskFitandBendy. How do you improve the lines of the leg? By opening up the back of the knee. The back of the knee goes very tight. Your lines don't look bad, Chelsea. And a nicer point through the ankle and foot. Can adults improve this? Yes, they can. So there are plenty of passive stretches for this, where people, you'll see coaches standing on little girls' knees and standing on their feet. And those are fine-ish for kids, but for adults, really, again, this is my little soapbox I like to stand on. Finding that active flexibility is going to be really important because it's going to give you the muscles that will open up that line. A lot of times the back of the knee is tight because that muscle that we were talking about earlier, so it all ties in. That muscle we were talking about earlier in the kneecap is weak. If your knee muscles are weak in the front, it's going to create tightness in the back. So this same exercise, pushing the back of the knee down, lifting the heel up, pushing back the knee down, lifting the heel up, and feeling that contraction. This muscle should be rock hard right above the knee. That will start to open this up. At first, you might not get any movement. That heel might not come off of the ground. You might still be able to get your hand underneath there no matter how much this is squeezed, but it will change over time, even for adults. And this is a way of doing it that's safe rather than pushing on the knee, or I see people sandbagging, going into an oversplit and putting a sandbag on the knee to push it out. But you really don't want to hurt your knees. Nobody wants to have you injured knees. It sucks. So you don't want to stretch out those ligaments. The knees are kind of fragile. You don't want to stretch out the ligaments in the knee. You want to build a muscle that's going to open up the other muscle. Now for toe point, there are lots of different toe point exercises. I really like this one where you're kneeling. You've got your support on your back leg. Put your weight on your back hands. Scoot back a little so you can see my foot. And then you just lift up the knee a little bit here. And the higher you lift up the knee, the more you get on the top of the foot. It's going to stretch different parts of the foot. So if the knee's down here, I'm really stretching the top of the foot. And if the knee is up here, now I'm on my toes. And that's a good way of stretching out your foot without any kind of apparatus or any kind of help from somebody else. You can also just take your foot and stretch it. But again, these are all passive stretches where you're manually or physically applying pressure to the foot to stretch it. That may not necessarily help you if you're an aerialist or a dancer and you want to have that beautiful ballet, amazing foot. That also comes from having the muscles in the feet and the calves to create that line. And so for that, you really just have to work on the muscles that point the foot. Hold the feet pointed, point them, point them, point them. And then there's another one that I really like that is for preventing the sickling of the foot. So sickling means that your foot is turning in like this. And this is a really, really common problem. And you'll see a lot that people's toes are pointed, but the feet kind of look funny, kind of turning in like that. You see it especially a lot when people are practicing splits because they're gripping with the feet. So what you do to strengthen the muscles in the feet to prevent that is you want to glue your ankle bones together. Now I realize that some people, just based on your anatomy, the ankle bones don't touch. If your ankle bones don't touch, get them as close as you can, and you can just put your fingers or a little pillow or something there, but try to get them to touch, and then point your toes as much as you can, and try to get just the big toes to come apart. So you'll feel this contraction through the outside of the foot and up the outside of the calf, and those are the muscles that you want to strengthen. So you see this? Those are the muscles that you want to strengthen to get that nice line to prevent the sickling in the feet. And make sure that you're not getting the toes to come apart by externally rotating the whole leg. That is what we like to call cheating. So you want to keep the leg square. There should be no change in the position of the shin bone. The shin bone shouldn't move at all. Everything stays the same. Just pull the toes, the big toes, directly apart. Again, at first when you try this, if you're super sickled, if you pronate a lot in your feet, you might not be able to feel that. But just try to feel that connection, that contraction in the outside of the calf and the feet. And it will definitely improve your toe point over time. So those two exercises should be helpful in opening up the back of the knee, creating a nicer dancer kind of line. Last question. I've been talking for a while now, haven't I? Half an hour. Samantha Casey. What do we have for Samantha? Oh, Samantha. Okay, so this is a really good question. Samantha always gets headaches after deep back bends. Worse when right, but it goes away when lying down. Neck is sore after doing standing back bend to bridge. Okay, so this is not a completely uncommon problem. I've definitely heard of other people. I've had other people asking me this. I've been in class with people who have this happen, that when they are doing back bends, they end up getting these really intense headaches. The headaches get better if you lie down, and they get worse if you're vertical. So there is a medical phenomenon that's called a spinal headache, and it's a headache that results from a disruption, often from a leak. I'm not saying you have a leak, but it's caused by something that goes on with the cerebrospinal fluid. It's the fluid that's all the way through your spine and up into your head. And I don't know this for sure. I am not a doctor, and I am not giving medical advice. Just want to make that really clear. But I believe that there is something that happens in back bends for certain people that messes with that cerebrospinal fluid. And I'm guessing that it probably has to do with somewhere in your spine. There are vertebrae that are being compressed too much to the point that that fluid, that flow of the fluid is interrupted. I think there's another thing that could be happening, which is that you are not breathing. It is very common in back bends for people to hold their breath or not be able to breathe fully. And I think that can actually make it worse. But the biggest problem is this idea of compression in the spine. I noticed that this problem is worse. And now I saw your picture, and you're getting real close to a catch ankle there. So your back is flexible. And this tends to be a problem for flexible people. And I think that what is happening, I haven't seen a video of you doing a back bend, but I am going to guess that you don't have an awful lot of bend in the upper back at the beginning, and you don't have a lot of support from your abdominal muscles, and you're going right into that nice bendy lower back, and it's going smoosh. And I know this because I know, myself included, people with bendy lower backs tend to have weaker abdominal muscles, and we're not as in touch with the upper back, and you have that happy bendy spot in your lower back, and you can just go swoosh. And everyone's like, oh, your back is so flexible, that's so great. And you're like, yeah, I know, my back's so flexible. But the problem with that awesome flexibility, with great flexibility comes great responsibility, right? If you don't support that flexibility with muscle, there are all sorts of problems, and this headache problem is just one of them. And I think you might also be doing this in your neck. Now, if you think about any part of your spine going backwards and smooshing, the places that are most likely to do that are in your neck and your lower back, because if you look at the way the spine curves, it naturally curves backwards here, and then it curves forwards in my upper back, and then again it curves backwards in the neck. So if I have a smooshy spine and I'm going backwards, I'm going to go smoosh in my neck, and then I'm going to go smoosh in my lower back. So those are probably the two areas where you could be getting that kind of compression that's creating the headache. So my best advice to you is short term. I hate to say it, stop doing back bends. Those headaches are bad for you. This is not good technique. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your brain. Stop doing back bends. Strengthen. Learn how to do a back bend without collapsing into either your neck or your lower back. This is going to be lots of strengthening. Hold planks. Hold a lot of planks. You should be able to hold 5 2-minute planks in a row with a nice, straight, flat back. That's a lot of core strength. Do a lot of lower ab strengthening. Then as you go back into back bending, you should be able to go down from your standing to your bridge, which I know you're working on, slowly. So if you find you're going, then you're lacking the muscular support for your level of flexibility. Shout out to all you naturally flexy people. I feel your pain. If you are just going smoosh into your poses, you can get into these poses. You have the flexibility to do it. But if you don't have the strength to support it, you're going to start to notice problems with your body. You're going to start to have pain, and you're not going to have control. It's not going to be beautiful. It's not going to be fluid. So take a step back. Don't go to your full flexibility. Don't go to your deepest back bends. Don't do all of your fancy tricks. Strengthen, stabilize, get the technique. When you go down from standing, it's head, chest. Right now, when I'm going down from standing, I am not going into my lower back until I've maxed out my middle and upper back. When I'm dropping my head back, I'm thinking about lengthening the neck. I can't actually do it right now, so I will start to cough. But I'm thinking about lengthening my neck up as it goes back. I'm thinking about creating space between my vertebrae before I go back, and that takes muscle. It takes muscle, the muscles along the spinal vertebrae that support them. It takes a lot of ab strength. It takes upper back strength. So building up those muscles, I think, will make a big difference. But short term, I would say, do yourself a favor and just stop doing these deep back bends until you develop more stability, because you don't want to damage anything. And if these headaches are so bad that they're staying with you for a while after you back bends, I would actually recommend that you see a doctor. It's not worth messing with your body and with your health that way. Stabilization. All right, that's all for today, folks. We're going to have another installment next week. And if you would like to submit questions for Ask Fit and Bendy, you can tell how much I enjoy answering them. You can either post them to our Facebook page, Fit and Bendy Contortion and Flexibility Training, or if you post your photo and question on Instagram with hashtag AskFitAndBendy, that's with and spelled out all the way, Ask Fit and Bendy, I will find you. So thank you again and have a wonderful night. Stay warm and happy bending.